Thank you, Madam Jalali. Yes, you have raised a few questions. Again, for the audience, you can go to Q&A at the bottom and type in your question, and also tell us whether you address them to someone. I see some people doing it in the chat, but you can do it in the Q&A. And again, I must admit, I didn't know you were a survivor of a Haqqani network attack, or as you call it, a terrorist attack, which the Haqqani network and the Taliban did together. I'm sure you're going to raise some questions about that. That is something we would definitely like to hear more about. And I am very surprised because you do see these pictures on the internet, but I'm very surprised that your mother wore a skirt in today's Afghanistan. It's maybe incomprehensible for the people living in the West that is also an Afghanistan which was there under King Amanullah. Suddenly things have changed a lot, and you talked about the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, saying that this basically aggressive thing is part of Afghan culture. While I have noticed that when it suits the Prime Minister of Pakistan, he finds a lot of pride in calling himself a Pashtun or an Afghan. And when it suits him, probably he calls it the digressive Afghan culture. And you talked about having students which gave you a lot of hope, especially women, young girls. And I think you would have, had you been a teacher to Miss Wahedi, you would have had the same hope in her, like you expressed, because she is, like I said, she is an entrepreneur, but also, the first civic technology startup which started in Afghanistan, Ehtesab. Ehtesab is basically, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, but Ehtesab is an Urdu word which means accountability, or could translate into accountability. She has been named in BBC's 100 Women of 2022. She was in the Time magazine's Next Generation Leaders. She is someone who, in many people's eyes, would not qualify for being an Afghan woman, because she has ventured into this technology platform, devised an app which helps Afghan people, and she's a woman, and she doesn't wear a burqa. Ms. Wahedi, over to you.
Thank you so much, distinguished panelists and attendees. Good morning. My name is Sara Wahedi, and I'm the CEO and founder of Ehtesab, a civic technology startup based in Kabul, Afghanistan. I'd like to first thank the European Foundation for South Asian Studies and Mr. Junaid Qureshi for inviting me to speak today, especially alongside two fellow Afghans whom I greatly respect and look up to, Dr. Saib Mahmoud Saikal and Dr. Saib Bahar Jalali. So since 2018, Ehtesab has been building community engagement and transparency tools, most notably through our Ehtesab app, which has been providing near real-time alerts to Kabul residents as of June 2020. We've also been collating reports in Nangarhar province and as well as Herat. This means that my team and I have become very well accustomed to who the Taliban are, how they encroached into cities long before August, and the trail of incessant human rights violations which they have left in their rise to power and execution of so-called power. And also, just like Dr. Jalali, I'm also a survivor of a suicide attack, but under an ISKP attack rather in May of 2018. Although narratives were churned out through the media that the Taliban has shifted from its more restrictive ideological approach of the late 90s, we see, as Dr. Jalali had said, a complete revert is under the works, especially with the shocking but unsurprising news on March 23rd that girls above the 6th grade would not be able to attend school, another failed and broken promise. At Ehtesab, we received countless reports of school closures, not only in Kabul, but provinces like Herat, where the Taliban has released press ops indicating that girls under the 6th grade were back in class and all had returned to normal. But this is not the case. We have received reports through Ehtesab of girls being turned away from classes, excuses being given on why impromptu school shutdowns are in place, and conflicting reports seen in the media. These girls want to be seen, they want to be heard, and the time to act is waning. As of August 2021 to approximately February of this year, UNAMA and OHCHR have documented over 1,100 civilian casualties, primarily suicide and non-suicide attacks perpetrated by ISKP against Shia Muslims, mostly from the Hazara ethnic group. Long before the takeover of the Taliban, the Shia community has been left to their own devices, whom as a subsect of Afghan society have experienced crippling loss and terror, as a systemic target has been put on their backs for over a decade. According to OHCHR, over 50 extrajudicial killings of individuals suspected to be ISKP have been documented as well, including cases of beheadings in Nangarhar province, where bodies have been left in public places. Yet these are only those which have been documented to the finite framework as expected of the UN. Extrajudicial killings of journalists, activists, women, and girls have also been circulating since August, with little to no framework of accountability to approach these cases. Also, credible reports have also been received regarding former government and security personnel and those subsequent extrajudicial killings of more than 100 former members of the Afghan National Security and Defense Forces or government personnel or their family members. On the 23rd of February, last month, the de facto Taliban Minister of Interior reportedly released a decree ordering security forces not to open fire on individuals at checkpoints and requiring them to have court orders prior to searching private homes. This has also been found to be an empty promise, as one of the largest waves of house raids took place shortly after, leaving homes just like mine in shambles. Family photos, heirlooms, a basic couch, shred to pieces. And this is by an entity which is feverishly aiming to obtain international recognition as a government, while terrorizing and isolating its own so-called citizenry. Many Afghans have gone into hiding as the Taliban continues to search and monitor individuals who supported American and international forces. In urban areas, Afghans feared losing developmental gains gained over the past 2 decades. These factors also demonstrate the obstacles the Taliban will face in gaining a significant degree of international support and recognition. With this lack of recognition is the devastating humanitarian and economic crisis which looms over the head of the everyday Afghan, further negating their access to economic, social, and cultural rights. According to the WFP, more than half of the population now suffers from extreme levels of hunger and starvation. An increase in child marriages, the selling of children, and child labor have also been observed. Following August, sanctions which were previously applied to the Taliban as a militant entity subsequently became sanctions against the entire Afghan population, as the Taliban took control as a de facto governing body. The resulting liquidity crisis has resulted in an economic crash which has crippled the country, as well as a non-humanitarian aid which was available through the IMF and World Bank, all suspended due to fears that the Taliban would not be able to deliver a tolerant and sustainable government. Thankfully, one silver lining in the disbursement of humanitarian transactions is the exemptions by the Security Council last December in allowing these transactions to move ahead to mitigate the food crisis and enable agencies to save millions of lives at risk. For Afghan women and girls, the Taliban has significantly reneged women's fundamental rights and freedoms which they have worked tirelessly to achieve in the last 2 decades. Since August 2021, women have largely been excluded from the workforce, except for the most urgent positions such as healthcare, primary schools, and civil servants who must engage directly with women. But limitations on freedom of movement negatively impact other aspects of women's lives, including access to health services, and also the recent travel ban we witnessed earlier this week of women trying to travel outside of Afghanistan without a male companion. The closure of many women's protection shelters have left women at risk. Justice systems established to deal with cases of gender-based violence are largely non-functional, especially in the inability and insecurity of involvement of Afghan women judges, prosecutors, and human rights defenders. Human rights defenders have been killed, arbitrarily detained, or subjected to other attacks and threats since August, as we've seen with the cases of Wahida Amiri, Tamana Zaryabi Paryani, and Parwana Ibrahim Khail. Also, Alia Azizi, a former Afghan national police officer from Herat, is still detained, with no framework available or any information in general as to why Alia Azizi has been arbitrarily detained for over 4 months, with no information at sight. I'd like to finish off by highlighting one integral need that will continue to grow in urgent necessity, and that is responsible journalism. This is an essential time to protect and support responsible journalism in Afghanistan. Journalism that takes time, journalism that is committed to finding reliable sources, digging deep, and fact-checking those sources incessantly. We need journalists in Afghanistan to be protected and uplifted more than ever before, especially at a time when we are overwhelmed with information from endless platforms and when the accuracy of news is often questioned for political purposes. Videos and photos are now the main medium of communication and vindication. And if misinformation and disinformation continues to flourish, it will move us countless steps behind. We do not know how to respond collectively to this crisis because the international community and Afghans themselves are unable to access basic facts, numbers, and confirmed reports. Moving forward, the international community must ensure that any engagement with the Taliban is based on universal conditions on meeting benchmarks of counterterrorism progress, alongside other international policy goals such as inclusive governance and respect for human rights. But whatever those conditionalities are, they must not come at the expense of the Afghan people, as Dr. Jalali had mentioned. The Afghan people require humanitarian assistance in the midst of an economic crisis. And at this time, if the world and the previous government fail to do so, we must not see the Afghan people any less than people. They are not numbers. They are not case studies. They are bright, imaginative, and unwaveringly community-oriented. Any approach that we take must see them as such. And I will leave it there. Thank you so much.